Mr. B's, Mr. B's, Mr. B's history. Finally, we've got there. Looking at 7 different factors, we're going to actually look at how to answer the question. The 16 marker that you're guaranteed to get in the Health and the People paper for AQA GCSE History. So you'd have seen this slide every time we've looked at a different factor, about a named factor and one other, about what the 7 factors are, about the different time periods. But now we're going to take it further. So what does this question look like? Well, has been the main factor in the development in other words, here's some examples. You can see from the different exam questions from different years. Now, these are the ones that are available on the AQA website. Some of these are November examination paper questions. Some of the summer ones aren't online yet. Your teacher may well yet have a much more detailed list. So nag them to death, get that detailed list. But you'll see you've got a factor and how it affects these particular things. So it could be medicine or causes of disease or treatment or surgery, public health or medicine. Now, I believe medicine is something that can either prevent or can treat. So I am going to include vaccination in my definition of medicine. I think you'd be on reasonably safe ground there. So let's have a look. Let's dig deeply into that. Okay, moving things on. What do you need to do to get full 16 marks for this question? Well, the exam board says you need to achieve a level 4, and this is what a level 4 looks like in exam speak. Clear as mud, if you're not a history teacher. However, in English, talk about the factor in question and at least one other. So from the list of 7, you've got to write about the one in the question, choose another one. Explain how the chosen factor, for example, chance, has helped the development of that feature, i.e. medical treatment. So chance helped this discovery led to this, which helped medicine because. If possible, use 2 examples of chance, if possible, from 2 different time periods. Standstill, beginnings, revolution or modern. If you can't manage it, don't panic, but you need to get a different time period in somewhere in your answer. Then, once you've done that, do it again, but do it for another factor. One that you know you can write about, and ideally one that you know has some sort of clear, obvious link to the factor mentioned in the question. If it's got a clear and obvious link to the factor mentioned in the question, you can sort of make a clear, obvious link as to which one's more important. Bear that in mind. And so that leads me to the last bit here. To clearly get into level 4, you need to explain how one of the factors helped cause a bigger change in the other factor. If one causes another, then I would suggest it's more important. Humbly, people. Okay, moving on. Now then, people, I just want you to take a look of this image of a driving test. And I want to think of you writing in a history exam like a driving test. Now, when I'm driving along and I want to see if I want to turn left or right, I look in the rear view mirror and to make sure everything's safe traffic-wise before signalling and manoeuvring. But when I was doing my driving test back in the early 80s, I wanted to make sure that the examiner knew that I was looking in the mirror when he asked me to turn left or right. So I made it obvious that I was looking in the mirror. And I want you to embrace that concept in your history writing in an exam. Make it obvious to your history examiner that you know what you're doing, you're well organised, and they will thank you for it. Your poor history examiner, I know you don't feel sorry for them, but your poor history examiner will have potentially well over 100 exam papers to mark. And imagine yours is, say, the 97th. It's quite late at night. The history examiner's got to get another 20 done and sent off to the exam board by tomorrow. Imagine that. And imagine the joy they will feel, when they see your paper clearly set out, being completely focused on answering the question. Not only will they thank you, but they'll also be much more likely to maximize the hard work and knowledge that you are displaying. So in an exam, make like a driving test. And by that I mean things like leave a line, make sure you're writing paragraphs. Leave a line gap between paragraphs so it is absolutely clear and obvious that you're organised. Let's crack on. So let's look at this question. Has chance been the main factor for the development of medicine? Now, I would always tell my students to answer the question in the first sentence. One, to tell the examiner straight away, I know what I'm talking about. Come along with me on this exciting history answer journey and we'll have a lovely time together. But also, if you panic in the middle of an answer, which is possible, and you forget what you're going to talk about, you've already written it in your first sentence. So this is a bit brief, but it's a sort of example. So chance medical discoveries have had a significant impact on the development of medicine. However, it is only when governments put their weight behind such improvements that medicine has got better for the many. So what I'm saying straight away there, I'm going to talk about chance, I'm going to talk about governments, and governments is going to be most important. So focus paragraph 1, chance. Now, you don't have to go with a factor in the question first. I would humbly suggest I like to build up an answer and then knock it down. So if I'm going to say government's more important, then leave that to the end. Okay, so chance, Edward Jenner, conversation with milkmaid. Oh, cowpox protects people from smallpox. Let's explore that. Let's examine that. Let's do 23 or 4 experiments. Let's publish that and prove that cowpox protects you from smallpox. That's just a very brief summary. You can read it for yourself on the screen. However, what I've done to help you, the red bits tell you the different dates, so I'm looking at different time periods, and the blue bits are ones that give you some specific factual information. So you may not remember that it was Jenner's gardener's son who was the first person to be experimented on with vaccination, or that he followed that up with 23 other experiments. Don't panic in exam. If you can't, is it 21? Is it 22? Is it 23? I can't go. Just say over 20 and you're fine. So I've talked about chance. I've talked about what Jenner's done with it, and I've talked about why it's important to the development of medicine. I'm leaving a line. Then I'm writing another paragraph again on chance. And here we've got Fleming, Alexander Fleming, clearly showing that he's noticed that a mould had landed on an open petri dish, and that mould had killed infection-causing bacteria. And he went, aha, I'll do some more experiments about that to see what level of strength of mould kills the bacteria. And then I'll write a scientific paper and forget about it. But at least he does write that scientific paper. And it's thanks to Fleming writing about that we have later developments, which leads on to penicillin, which saves hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people's lives. So let's move on. That's the first factor. In the next slide, we're going to look at the second factor. Okay, let's continue our journey through the question, has chance been the main factor for the development of medicine? Remember, driving test, make it obvious, let's go. So, The third paragraph is going to focus on the second factor that you've chosen. Remember, you can do more than 2, but if you do 2 good ones, you can get full marks, not a problem. And there is a small matter of time pressure in the exam. So here we go. Whilst chance medical breakthroughs such as vaccination and penicillin were important, it was only, shouty capitals, when governments put their full support behind such developments did it have widespread benefit on a large number of people. So what I've tried to do there is to link what I've written previously about Jenner and Fleming and vaccination and penicillin, and then linked it in to the government. Okay. For example, I'm giving some context here. Jenner's development of a vaccination against smallpox only made marginal progress against this dreadful disease. As late as 1850, specific date, when vaccination was still optional, there was a death rate of about 300 people per million due to smallpox. However, after the government strictly enforced compulsory vaccination, the death rate plummeted to well under 50 by 1880. Remember, that's nearly 100 years after Jenner discovered vaccination, clearly demonstrating the crucial role of government over and above Jenner's chance discovery. So I've linked here, as you need to do for level 4, government with chance, and explained why the government made a bigger difference. But I'm not finished there. Oh no. More government. Let's do the same, but this time with penicillin. Despite the importance of Fleming's discovery of penicillin, nothing of medical substance happened until the government got involved. Florian Chain, here comes some specific knowledge, who took on Fleming's work in the 1930s, couldn't remember the date, so just put 1930s, were unable to produce enough penicillin to even save 1 patient from an infection. If you want more detail, it was a police officer who got an infection from a rose thorn. It was only when the government identified the need to save large numbers of their soldiers from infection that the production of penicillin made a real and widespread difference, with 2.3 million doses available for D-Day, and then made available for all as part of the services provided by the NHS from 1947 onwards, thus finally having the widest possible impact on the health of the nation. And then if I want to finish my driving test, leave a line, sock it to them once more. In summary, though chance began the move towards developing medicine, see, in that sentence I've referred to chance and developing medicine, it was only when governments fully prioritised the discoveries that many more people were helped, making government a more important factor than chance. More important. Okay, I'm not saying that chance was unimportant because they discovered it. So there you go, people. I've tried to demonstrate there clearly a range of knowledge, a range of time periods, a focus on 2 distinct factors and how one factor affects the other. That's how you do it. You're going to be fab. Good luck, and I will give you other videos with other how-to tips. And finally, as ever, if you can, give me any suggestions, polite please, via email or in the comments below. Good luck.